Hello, I'm Maurice Powell. Welcome to A Little Light Music, Manx Radio's regular Thursday evening classical music hour. This evening we have the usual mixture of light classical pieces, most of them brief, I'm glad to say, very lyrical, very rhythmic, very jolly, typical sort of light music. And we have some British light music classics as well. But we do need an overture to start the programme, and one composer who has written dozens of them is Franz von Suppé, the Viennese contemporary of Johann Strauss. He was a famous composer of operetta. Now, he's famous for two things, really. One, having the longest name in the history of music, and two, for having the biggest beard in 19th century music. Perhaps I should explain. He was born in Spalato, nowadays Split. I'm not sure which actually sounds most attractive, Spalato or Split. Needs work. But his name was Francesco Erzsachila Ermenegildo Cavalieri Suppé de Melli. Right, so had I been called that, I think I would have reduced it to Franz von Suppé as well. So, yes, he had a bigger beard even than Brahms. It's said, I don't know whether this is true, that when Suppé was in town, Brahms stayed indoors. However, that's all nonsense, of course. Suppé began his career at the Theater in the Josefstadt in Vienna as quite a young man. That theatre apparently is still there. In fact, I'm fairly certain I've heard an operetta there 5-6 years ago. So a very old theatre, very well established for light sort of music, of which operetta, of course, reigns supreme in Vienna. The overture comes from an operetta called Fatinitsa, not one of his best known, written in 1876, but it was enormously popular, and really it marked his return to prominence. His career took a bit of a dip when Johann Strauss II started to write his famous operettas, but with Fatinitsa he made a bit of a comeback on the operetta scene. I've never seen the operetta, although I do have a recording of it, and the music seems to me very fine. The story is set during the Russo-Turkish War. It's a love story. I mean, I didn't even know there was a Russo-Turkish War, to be quite honest, and I've no idea who won. Probably the Turks, I don't know. They're very sneaky in the 19th century. However, not too much history. Suppé, the overture to Fatinitsa. The sparkling overture to Suppé's operetta Fatinitsa, just the sort of thing that you like to hear when you're settling down in a Viennese theatre for an evening of froth and nonsense. So let's move on to something completely different. I don't think I can find any connection at all in any way between Suppé and the next composer, who, of course, Frederick Delius. Recognised as one of the finest English composers, although he actually spent very little time in England. He spent most of his life in France, partly in Florida, and then Norway. He studied in Germany. He spent very little time in England, and to me, his music is not typically English in a sort of Elgar Vaughan Williams sort of a way. It's more French, really, than anything. Some of his wonderful sort of landscapes that we think of as typically English or inspired by English landscapes were in fact written in French. Even some of his most famous pieces, like, The Walk to the Paradise Garden or Upon Hearing the First Cuckoo in Spring, these were not really inspired by anything you'd have seen out of a British cottage window. These were quite definitely scenes from his house by the side of a beautiful French river. Nevertheless, he is regarded mostly, I think, as an English composer. Now, the piece I'm going to play is Idyll of Spring, written in 1899, a fairly early piece, and composed in France. The score was given to Beecham, who was a great supporter of Delius, but in fact Beecham never performed the work, and in fact the work had to wait 106 years, this must be a record, for its premiere by the Northern Philharmonic Orchestra in 1995, so it's hardly surprising that it's not very well known. The work is generally considered to be strongly influenced by Grieg. I mentioned that Delius spent some time in Norway, and he was great friends with Grieg and very much influenced by him. There's a beautiful pastoral oboe theme to start with. Although the work is just in one movement, in fact divides up into at least 10 different sections with lots of changing moods. However, I hope you enjoy it. Something unusual by Delius, Idyll of Spring. A lovely piece that, which I must listen to again sometime soon. There's a great deal in that piece, which appeals to me very strongly. Idyll of Spring by Delius. Now, not at all really like the sort of English music of Elgar. In fact, that piece was written the same year as Elgar's Enigma Variations, but they have virtually nothing in common except they're both descriptive of different things. The Delius piece is really quite impressionistic. Anyway, I'll leave it there. But interesting composer, Delius. That work perhaps not so obviously by Delius as some of the mature, perhaps better known pieces, but beautifully orchestrated and just about the right length to sort of relax to. So where are we now? Do you know? I've absolutely no idea. Let me just see what I've got here on my list. And, it's Trevor Duncan. We need something jolly, short and jolly, after that sort of pastoral piece. This is Trevor Duncan, a very well-known and respected composer of British light music. This particular piece, High Heels, full of joie de vivre. It's warm, it's charm, it has a great freshness about it. A perfect short piece. Trevor Duncan, High Heels. Trevor Duncan, High Heels. Now, it's not often I get the chance to play an entire symphony during a programme that lasts just less than 1 hour, but this evening I'm going to have a go. The symphony is by a composer who will not be familiar, Johann Stamitz. He lived in the early to middle part of the 18th century, and he was connected with the court of Mannheim in Germany and its famous orchestra, which Mozart knew very, very well. The orchestra was so famous that it was likened to an army of generals only, or in other words, an orchestra full of soloists with hardly any rank and file players in it at all. It had an extremely high reputation throughout all of Europe. And Stamitz wrote for this orchestra, as did his son, Karl Stamitz, whose music is frighteningly like Mozart's in some ways. I've just been listening to a viola concerto of Karl Stamitz just the other day, and I was thinking, good heavens, if Mozart had written a viola concerto, it would sound just like this. However, the father, Johann Stamitz, wrote loads of symphonies. In fact, he was a pioneer, really, of the symphony as we know it today, along with Haydn and others, of course. This particular symphony comes from a set of six, and they come from different times. They weren't all written at the same time. Somewhere between the 1740s and the 1750s. This is a symphony in E-flat major, not that that matters very much, and the whole thing lasts just 8 minutes and 11 seconds. Now, if you compare that with other well-known symphonies, Mozart's Symphony No. 39, which also happens to be in the key of E-flat major, lasts around 30 minutes in the average performance. Beethoven's Eroica Symphony, a much larger piece, lasts around 50 minutes. Bruckner's Fourth Symphony lasts around 65 minutes, and let's not even talk about Mahler's Symphony No. 8, which seems to go on for days. So, in other words, at 8 minutes 11 seconds, if this, comparing it with, say, the Mozart Symphony, we'd just be coming near the end of the first movement. But with the Bruckner's Fourth Symphony, it hardly got going after 8 minutes and 11 seconds. It will be just barely a third of the way through the first movement. So, in other words, what do we learn from that? Well, of course, the symphony started out as a fairly modest piece to sort of start a program or a drama of some sort, and ended up as a kind of a monster by the end of the 19th century. Well, that's enough history. So, Johann Stamitz, his tiny little symphony in E-flat major. So, a complete symphony in 3 short movements by Johann Stamitz of Mannheim. Now, I love these early sort of 18th century symphonies. They're full of incident, and they vary in mood tremendously. Stamitz was a very fine composer, not perhaps in the Haydn or Mozart league, but I mean, in fairness, who else was in the Haydn and Mozart league in the 18th century? It's a bit unfair to compare someone like Stamitz with someone like Mozart, but an enjoyable piece. I hope you enjoyed it anyway. And now to the music of Eric Coates, and something I don't think I've played in all 5, nearly 6 years of this series. It's an extract from The Jester at the Wedding. Now, this was a ballet that was conceived by Coates and his wife. It's a story, really, of a jester and a princess. It's a love story. I don't think the full ballet was ever completed, but certainly Coates did draw together from the music of the projected full score a suite of 5 or 6 movements, and the best known of these is The Dance of the Orange Blossoms, a gentle waltz. Eric Coates, The Jester at the Wedding, Dance of the Orange Blossoms. The music of Eric Coates, The Dance of the Orange Blossoms, from his ballet suite, The Jester at the Wedding. And now to the music of Ron Goodwin, probably best known for the film music for the film The 633 Squadron, but he wrote much else as well. This is called Arabic Celebration, and it was written to mark the 50th anniversary of the BBC's Arabic service in 1988, and it was premiered at Broadcasting House that year. Ron Goodwin, Arabic Celebration. The music of Ron Goodwin, Arabic Celebration. So that brings us to the end of the programme. I hope you've enjoyed my selection and will join me again at 9 o'clock next Thursday evening. We need something to play us out with. How about Sydney Torch, Shortcake Walk? Goodbye.